Chapter 1. The Piper Aztec flew out of the clouds, and the jagged green mass of Elephant Island appeared beneath the nose, dead ahead. Long ages since, huge volcanic forces had thrust its mountains from the seabed, their crests streaming lava and plumes of sulphurous smoke in the South Pacific trades. Then the gentler but no less determined forces of wind and rain had moulded it, bringing and nurturing the seeds that had clothed it in luxuriant forests, and the rivers to cut deep valleys through the ranges, washing down the silt of millennia to fill the wide swamps at the eastern end. And now, to this indolent and undemanding home of primitive men was coming a force of change, mightier than lava and earthquake, fire and landslide. Dr. Sidney Prout, Ph.D. London, and sometime lecturer in sociology at Manchester, was the head of the United Nations mission to Elephant Island. Incredibly emaciated, his gaunt frame was crowned with a bony head whose chief features were a covering of ginger bristles on the scalp and two piercing eyes. "There she is," said Ross McLennan, the pilot. "Elephant Island." "But there aren't any elephants in the Pacific. What a ridiculous name." "There was once. Belonged to Blackbird McGarvey, old-time skipper. Fell for the chief's daughter, but her old man sized up his schooner and reckoned a man with a canoe that big could cough up with one hell of a big pig for his daughter. Blackbird tried every dodge he could think of to get the girl, but it was no go. The chief had it stuck in his head that the white man had everything bigger than the brown man and wanted his cut. Well, Blackbird was stumped for a time till one day he was in Sydney when the circus was in town. They had a sick young elephant and wanted to unload it on some sucker, which was Blackbird. He paid a fortune for it, clapped it in the hold, brought it out here, put on his top hat and fancy waistcoat, and led it out on the beach to claim his beloved. The locals took one look and shit themselves. Took off into the bush and didn't come out for a month. He never got the girl neither. She'd pissed off with her old man, and Blackbird got clobbered by a typhoon and his ship went down with all hands. Unlucky sort of bloke, really. What happened to the elephant? Dunno. I suppose the locals kai-kai'd it when they worked up enough guts for the job. These coastal bastards look good enough on a picture postcard, but one whiff of a mountain man, and they're up the palm trees so fast you'd think there was red-hot pokers up their bums. Prout frowned. The crudely contemptuous racialism of the pilot came as a shock, even though he had read about such attitudes in the Journal of Race Relations. He adroitly diverted the conversation into more strictly sociological channels. These mountain people, are they as ferocious as their reputations? Oh yeah, they're a rough mob all right. They're called Morocks, but Rog has 'em pretty well tamed. Gets on with 'em well too. Rog? He's the RM, resident magistrate. Roger Fletcher's his name. They call him Roaring Roger around here. Good bloke when you get to know him. Very practical. Prout pursed his lips. Practical. Anyone whom the likes of McLennan called practical almost certainly despised sociology and was prone to ignoring the proper administrative procedure. Well, from what we've heard in New York, he doesn't seem to have been very successful. That's why we're taking over. Yeah, I heard you blokes were giving Australia the push. You don't reckon we're up for the job, is that it? Oh no, not at all. But unfortunately, Australia has allowed an unqualified and really a very reactionary man to have his own way with the island for so long that no social or economic progress has been made at all. At this stage in the process of decolonisation, Australia feels it would be less embarrassing for her if the United Nations assumed the responsibility for preparing the Indigenous people for independence. That's why I'm here. Ross digested this information and being, like most professional pilots, a resigned and imperturbable man, he said nothing. He merely cut back the power and put the aircraft into a shallow descent, to take them over the coastline at an altitude of 5,000 feet. The airstrip's up in the mountains around 3,000 feet up. Climate's bloody terrible on the coast, all mozzies and swamp. The Yanks were here during the war and put this strip up in the Ungabunga, but the RMs always lived there. By the way, we're just flying over Byron Bay now. Don't tell me that Lord Byron came here looking for a wife too. The pilot flashed him an amused grin. No, nothing like that. Just the first RM. Carstairs. A bloody loony. They all seem to end up here. This one had a thing about the great poets. Have a look at the chart. Ruddy poets' names all over. As they passed over the beaches below, Ross brought the nose of the plane up and boosted the power to check their descent, then levelled out. The great peaks of Shakespeare and Milton rose ahead of them, with Wordsworth a little to the rear. Even at 11 in the morning, clouds were drifting near the summits. They flew on in silence, and Prout surveyed his new responsibilities as they passed below. Near the coast were a few scattered villages among the mangrove and sago swamps that were cut into fragments of lagoon by the greasy waters of the Ungabunga River as it moved slowly towards the open sea, dully reflecting the sun. Up ahead were the ranges, monotonously green, upon whose flanks was not the smallest indication of human habitation or activity. As they reached the point where the Ungabunga debouched from its mountain prison, Ross banked the plane and they turned into the valley, which had somehow escaped the literary ravages of the first resident magistrate. The spurs began to rise beneath them, and soon Prout could see tiny settlements of leaf-thatched huts and scattered gardens in the forest. And along the backs of ridges he saw spidery tracks of red clay that stood out clearly against the green. In the bottom of the valley foamed the waters of the Ungabunga. The walls of the valley were rising steadily around them, and after a few minutes, Ross banked to the left and turned into the tributary gorge. Soon he pointed to a spur below them, on Prout's side, and shouted, "Ungabunga!" 2,000 feet below them, the strip could be plainly seen, overshadowed at one end and along one side by the almost vertical wall of the mountainside, with a precipice dropping sheer into the river at the other end by the windsock. At the top of the strip under the mountain was a stockaded fort with various buildings inside, while more structures lined the side of the strip along the mountain wall. But even at this height, it was obvious that their arrival was unexpected, to say the least. The strip was occupied by what appeared to be two ranks of people facing each other, with another group at the fortress end. Ross let down some flap and put the plane into a left-hand circuit, which obscured Prout's view, but as they circled lower, they saw the two ranks charge together and begin hacking at each other with barbaric vigour. By the time Ross had brought the plane down to 1,000 feet above the strip, they could see that the parties to the dispute were small, furious, dark-skinned men clad in feathers, busily engaged in battering the daylights out of each other with wooden clubs. "It seems that I've arrived only just in time," Prout commented thoughtfully.